trolling Senator Elizabeth Warren as a snake, and in post after post, labeling Mayor Pete Buttigieg a rat. Two victims of this tell CNN they were so afraid of the online attacks they faced, they don't even want us to describe the circumstances for fear it would start up again. They both just questioned the politics of Bernie Sanders in a public setting, and their personal lives were exposed and attacked.
Well, just what Nick said, I think that's right. I mean, there is no Democratic establishment anymore. There's not even a Democratic Party anymore. The Democratic Party is a meaningless notion that the party, like the Republican Party, has been hollowed out and privatized to a large extent. There are Democratic elites, and so when we're talking about the Democratic establishment, we're really talking about a bunch of people that Nick also knows well, which really means Democratic donors.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
This election is the most important in the modern history of this country.
The election in 2020, without hyperbole, is going to be the most important election this country has undergone in over 100 years. Not a joke.
This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot.
There are just 8 days left in what is the most important election of our lifetime.
Where did you guys come to a conclusion about why Clinton had such a hard time just owning that she did something wrong with the email service?
You know, I know that Russia and other forces would love us to have a debate. This is exactly what they want. They want us to have a debate about the internal structure of Hillary's campaign, what's true, what's not true. And I'm just not going to play that. I'm sorry.
Yes, we came, we saw, he died.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
You know, people have said, if you look at, for example, the heat that ended up around the bend the knee of Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. Many smart people have said it actually was not a plan. The Russian bots started taking out. Yes.
But I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should be running.
This is not about.
If you're like me, one of the millions suffering from pain caused by migraine, Nurtec ODT may help. It's the only medication that can treat a migraine when it strikes and prevent migraine attacks.
Trump and the Republicans lose on Tuesday, and if they lose badly, it's not going to be because of the left, whatever that means. It's not because of the 50 Antifa black mask guys who roam around the United States breaking windows and committing mayhem, most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Rudy Giuliani, there's only three things he mentioned in a sentence, a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean...
I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today.
And I went to Wall Street in December of 2007, before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
I can't do it.
We'll do it live.
Okay.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet. Got to scoot over a little bit, it looks like. I'm out of frame. How y'all doing out there? It's good to be back after another interesting week.
Yo, we here now. Stupid.
So I want to start today with the overall sentiment. Here, let me fix this a little bit. Let me just fix that just a little bit. So you got it better. There we go. That's just a little bit. There we go. So I want to start today with a sentiment that I think is an accurate summation of where we are as a country. This is from a guy I retweeted, Old McFadden, and he says, "This country is in the condition it's in because of generations of common folk going along to get along, and because of the evil assholes who took advantage of the population's inclination to behave that way." And I don't know if there's any more accurate kind of a wrap up of the last 3 or 4 years than that. I was out last night at a show, a concert, and I'm not even kidding you. There were people in the concert wearing COVID masks. My mind was blown. I turned around and there's like people like with their full COVID standing in like a crowd of people. And I'm just like, I hope that those people are sick, but I know that they're probably not, because that's the only situation where that makes any sense, where you're actually sick and you're trying not to, harm other people. And again, these people are being manipulated by their fear, and it goes right back to this. It's using, Americans, I guess, what's the word? Good intentions against ourselves. Our good intentions as people have been weaponized, and you see it in the political dialogue all over the place, where I've said this about liberals before. Everyone has friends or relatives or is themselves a liberal. And a lot of those people, as wild and batshit as some of the stuff that they believe in can be, I think they're generally coming from a place of good intention. So with that said, let's start with this story about weather manipulation. Now, to begin this, I want to go back a couple years to the mainstream. Well, I told myself I wasn't going to call them the mainstream anymore. The corporate news's favorite conspiracy theorist, Marjorie Taylor Greene. So there was a big controversy a couple years ago. I always say controversy like Hershey instead of controversy. So forgive me for that. It's early and I've only had a cup of coffee so far. So if you remember this, there was a big controversy about Marjorie Taylor Greene over space lasers. Now, whenever the corporate press jumps so hard on someone or something that they said to kind of spin it into a conspiracy theory or some kind of a, batshit extremist thing, it always instantly makes me curious, because I have to ask myself, why would these people be going so hard against, this kind of a comment if it wasn't insane, right? Like, if what she's saying isn't completely insane, why would the entire corporate media structure work in unison to try and disprove it like this? They could just let it die because the average person will. So I want to read to you what she said. This is from her Facebook post a couple years ago, and it's tiny print, so hopefully you can see it. If not, I'm just going to read it for you real quick. I probably won't read the entire thing, but let's get going. So this is, just to preface this too, this is from the California wildfires back in, I think, so this is from 2018, it says. As there are now over 70 people confirmed dead and 1,000 missing, the fires in California are a horrific tragedy. Yeah, so that was, 2018. So that's when there was a huge, I was actually in the midst of all this. I had to evacuate my home at the time. And it was right after a mass shooting had happened in the area that I lived in at a place called Borderline. So I remember this very well. So anyway, just to put myself in context there. She says, I'm praying for all involved. I'm posting this speculation because there are too many coincidences to ignore, and just putting it out here from some research I've done stemming from my curiosity over PG&E stocks, which tanked all week, then rallied Thursday night after a CA official announced they would not let PG&E fail. I find it very interesting that Roger Kimmel on the board of directors at PG&E is also vice chairman of Rothschild Inc. I wonder if he's related to Jimmy Kimmel. International investment banking firm. I also find interesting the long history of financial contributions that PG&E has made to Jerry Brown over the years, millions spent in lobbying. What a coincidence it must be that Governor Brown signed a bill in September 2018 protecting PG&E and allowing PG&E to pass off its cost of fire responsibility to its customers in rate hikes and through bonds. It must also be a coincidence that the fires are burning in the same projected areas that the $77 billion high-speed rail project is to be built. You know, if that's what they got to do to get the rail project built, I might not be completely against it. Don't quote me on that. That was, which also happens to be Governor Brown's pet project. And what are the odds that Weinstein's husband, or what is it? Feinstein's husband, sorry, Dianne Feinstein. So remember, this was 2018, before she was dead. Richard Bloom is the contractor to the rail project. Geez, with that much money, we could build 3 U.S. border walls. Then oddly, all these people who have said they saw what looked like lasers or blue beams of light causing the fires in pictures and videos don't know anything about that. But I do find it really curious that PG&E's partnership with SolarIn on space solar generators started in 2009. They announced the launch into space March 2018, and maybe even put them up before that. Space solar generators collect the sun's energy and then beam it back to Earth to a transmitter to convert it to electricity. The idea is clean energy to replace coal and oil. Nothing wrong with that. If they are beaming the sun's energy back to Earth, I'm sure they couldn't ever miss a transmitter receiving station, right? I mean, mistakes never made when anything new is invented. What would that look like anyway? A laser beam or a light beam coming down to Earth, I guess. Could that cause a fire? I don't know. Hope not. That wouldn't look so good for PG&E. Rothschild Inc., SolarIn, or Jerry Brown, who sure does seem fond of PG&E. Good thing for SolarIn that Michael Peavy is on their board, since he's former president of California Public Utilities Commission, California's most powerful energy regulatory agency. Great connections right there. Also, I will say, whoever was able to buy that PG&E stock at the bottom before that announcement was made, when stocks rallied, sure did well on their investment. I wonder how you get privy to that kind of info. You must have to know somebody, right? Seems like there's a lot of connected people in this crowd. And with these space solar generators, I really hope they have very good aim at beaming the sun's power down to Earth. But what do I know? I just like to read a lot. So she has a link here to SolarIn Corp to launch solar panels into orbit to kind of back up her quote unquote conspiracy theory here. So the reason I find this to be interesting is because there has been a lot of talk recently about weather manipulation with these hurricanes that are happening conveniently right before a big election. And of course, the people that are bringing that up are conspiracy theorists, and you'd have to be completely insane to, think that someone might be manipulating the weather, like Marjorie Taylor Greene here, who's talking about Jewish space lasers. What a fucking kook. What an insane person. So just to keep going down this path, let's jump into this clip that Jimmy Dore recently reposted of Michio Kaku
about climate
talking
change yesterday.
using lasers to control the weather.
Scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. Lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning. CBS This Morning contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City College of New York. Professor, nice to see you.
I don't know how old this clip is, but I assume it's post 2018.
Extraordinary seeing Al Gore and Bill Clinton there together with Charlie, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, they did not get into this discussion,
No.
though. But it is fascinating. I mean, lasers, really, to change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental. However, in the laboratory so far, it works.
So wait till you hear what he says at the end of this, because this is kind of the crescendo.
When you
at the
have
end of
water
this clip.
vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning. Katie, go ahead.
Well, this fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USS...
So if you'll notice, I think it's funny just to pause here for a second. When it comes to the term space lasers, for some reason, the term Jewish always gets added to it. And then that way it's like a racist thing to suggest that people are using, lasers to control the weather because it's Jewish space lasers, you anti-Semite. Interesting how that works.
Had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Inconclusive. Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War, to wash out the Viet Cong. Governments have been playing with this thing.
Alleged to.
Alleged to, right.
Yeah.
Now, realize that for decades...
She has to correct him. They're alleged to. That's not proven. My handlers want that confirmed.
Now, these governments have been alleged to have experimented with weather control, but nothing conclusive. This time we're bringing in the laws of physics rather than simply waving our hands and uttering mumbo jumbo. We're actually using trillion-watt lasers now. And in the laboratory, sure enough, they precipitate rain out of water vapor. Sure enough, you can actually bring down electricity down the beam.
So what does it mean for drought areas that need to have rain for crops, and if they don't have them, there's the consequences of famine?
Well, the bad news is if it's a clear blue sky, it's not going to do anything at all, because it only takes water vapor that's already in the air and condenses it. However, for floods, for agriculture...
So technically, if there's already a hurricane brewing, you could make it more or less powerful. Allegedly.
Farmers, for people planning wedding parties, football games, you name it, outdoor events and agriculture and flooding and even hurricanes. All of them could be subject to weather modification.
Incredibly interesting, Professor Michio Kaku. Thank you so much.
I like how he uses these very here, let me get that evened out a little bit. I like how he uses these very what's the word? benign things for weather, like weddings or outdoor events, like sporting events. We could fix the weather to make sure that no one misses the latest college football game. I would never suggest that this technology could be used for nefarious purposes. Let's think about Hallmark greeting cards and things like that. So just to wrap this up for you, this last clip is just a little bit more confirmation of, the better nature of human beings and how, you can see the direction they're going.
Is the array of technologies often referred to collectively as...
And this is American hero John Brennan, former CIA director, and the guy largely behind the Russiagate scandal.
Geoengineering that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. An SAI program could limit global temperature increases, reducing some risks associated with higher temperatures and providing the world economy additional time to transition from fossil fuels. This process is also relatively inexpensive. The National Research Council estimates that a fully deployed SAI program would cost about $10 billion yearly. As promising as it may be, moving forward on SAI would also raise a number of challenges for our government and for the international community. On the technical side, greenhouse gas emission reductions would still have to accompany SAI to address other climate change effects, such as ocean acidification, because SAI alone would not remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. On the geopolitical side, the technology's potential to alter weather patterns and benefit certain regions of the world at the expense of other regions could trigger sharp opposition by some nations. Others might seize on SAI's benefits and back away from their commitment to carbon dioxide reductions. And as with other breakthrough technologies, global norms and standards are lacking to guide the deployment and implementation of SAI and other.
So we want to keep it that way is basically what he's saying. But the reality is these people are admitting that this technology exists, despite calling Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know, a conspiracy theorist 20 minutes ago for pointing out that this technology exists. Moving on. So recently there was a big hubbub over this clip. It's an AI-generated clip of Kamala Harris, and I'm just going to play it because it's hilarious. Hopefully I don't get banned from YouTube. But I got to give YouTube credit again. They've been pretty good, as we're going to see in a few minutes. So here's this this AI-generated. This is AI-generated clip. Completely fake.
Kamala Harris, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Alex. It's really great to be here.
We are 1 month out.
I think it's pretty obvious that it's fake to anyone who isn't a complete drooling imbecile.
Out from the election. My audience is basically just whores and gay guys. Why should they vote for you?
I think it's simple. Vote for me and you'll have the first hoe in chief. Or vote for Donald Trump and no more abortions.
I love that you just called yourself hoe in chief. My audience of girl boss whores really can relate to that.
Google my name and Willie Brown or Montel Williams. It's not an act.
I love it. You've been married to Doug for 10 years now. What does he like in the bedroom?
I'd say I'm probably the more adventurous one between the two of us. He's pretty vanilla, but you know, that pairs real nice with some chocolate.
So what's funny about this is it's like the same thing that they do to Trump all day long on every goddamn late night talk show. You know, it's clearly satire and parody, but when it's done cleverly, as it is in this case, Gavin Newsom has to make a law against it to try and ban it.
What does that look like then?
All kinds of stuff. Breath play, knife play, some light BDSM. He really loves to get pegged.
Most people would assume that.
That's definitely his favorite. He likes it when I put a ball gag in his mouth and peg him while calling him my dirty little whore first gentleman.
That's so freaky. We talk about blowjobs a lot on this podcast. Probably half of everything we talk about. Everyone assumes you're a throat goat. Is that accurate?
Of course. I like to get down there and just make a real mess of things. Messier than how we pulled out of Afghanistan.
Wow, that is messy. What about the balls? Do you like to get in there?
Doug goes wild when I put rubber bands around them until they turn blue. And when he can't take the pain anymore, I peg him until he cries.
Damn, you might be the freakiest guest we've ever had.
I'm a natural leader, which is what helps Doug bust nuts. But that is also the thing that makes me the best option to lead this country come November.
If you win, I bet Doug will be coming in November.
For his sake, I hope we win. Because if I lose, Doug is going to be sitting on a donut for the entire Trump presidency. Maybe even the rest of his life.
Very cosmopolitan.
So this is the comedian who put this together. His name is Danny Polishuk. Follow him. Hilarious stuff. So again, Gavin Newsom put this up. He basically put forward he signed a bill saying that this type of satire using AI was illegal during election season. I don't remember the details of it. I think it's irrelevant because, as I'm going to show you, a judge disagreed with Gavin Newsom. So here's the headline from Politico. Judge blocks California deepfakes law that sparked Musk-Newsom row. And Elon Musk had this great reply, which I didn't clip and I should have. I'll have to put it in post. But he said something about like my boss, my editor, the esteemed Sugon D's Nuts, disagrees with your take on this, Gavin, or something like that. So it's pretty hilarious. But here's a little bit more about the decision is a blow to the state's leading Democrats who've tried to rein in misleading social media content ahead of the November election. As you can see, that was very misleading, that Kamala Harris clip that I just showed you that sparked this controversy. Sacramento, this is from Tyler Katzenberger on October 2nd. So this is old news, but that's what I do best. I dig up old news and replay it for you because I don't have time to do this every day. So take it for what it's worth. Sacramento, California federal judge on Wednesday blocked a California measure restricting the use of digitally altered political deepfakes just 2 weeks after Governor Gavin Newsom signed the bill into law. My Freudian slip there, Governor Gavin Gaslight Newsom. I almost said gas in there. Governor Gavin Gas and Gaslighter Newsom signed the bill into law. The ruling is a blow to the push by state to rein in misleading cuts. So that's what it said in the headline. I'm just reading that again because they already put that in the promo text up there. But one more quick little bit of this. Chris Kobles, known as Mr. Reagan on X, sued to prevent the state from enforcing the law after posting an AI-generated video of a Harris campaign ad on the social media site. He claimed the video was protected by the First Amendment because it was parody. The judge agreed. Thank you, judge, for not being a partisan dipshit. Most of the law acts as a hammer instead of a scalpel, senior U.S. District Judge John A. Mendez wrote. Thank you, judge. Calling it a blunt tool hinders humorous expression and unconstitutionally stifles the free and unfettered exchange of ideas. He carved out an exception for a not unduly burdensome portion of the law that requires verbal disclosure of digitally altered content in audio-only recordings. So that is a absolutely brilliant and correct ruling. And it's stuff like this that sometimes, I hate to say it, but gives me a little bit of faith in our system still, because this judge clearly is not a partisan hack and came down on the correct side of the issue, which, if you've noticed, hasn't been happening a lot these days. So, getting into some of the good stuff now, we are going to talk about Jeremy Loffredo from the Gray Zone being kidnapped, arrested. People are saying arrested. I'm saying kidnapped by the IDF for reporting accurately on some stuff that, apparently they didn't want anyone to report on. They've gone after Al Jazeera. They've straight up just like murdered a lot of journalists. And it's disgusting, to be honest, to see the U.S. doing nothing about it and not standing on principles over, the insane level of fellatio that we're giving to our that I was going to say benefactors, but what's the benefactees actually is probably a better word, right? So let's start with this clip of Kim Iverson, who kind of recaps the entire situation. So actually, let's not start with that. Let me back up a little bit there. I need to use my sound effects more often. Okay. So about a week ago, I did this show on Sunday morning. And before I went to bed Saturday night, I watched a video, which we're going to see here in just a minute, of Jeremy Loffredo doing a report from Israel, from the Gray Zone, that they had just freshly posted. And then a couple days later, I get onto Twitter and I see that he's been basically arrested. And that reminds me, while I'm playing this, I need to grab another tweet that I forgot to add to the mix here. But Kim Iverson right here is going to kind of just sum up the situation for you. She did a great piece on this.
Loffredo had been arrested, taken in by the Israelis. This is the tweet that came out from Andre X. He says, "Today I was beaten, kidnapped, blindfolded, and taken to a military base by the Israeli occupation forces, together with 4 other journalists. 2 of us were held for 11 hours without charges. My phone was confiscated, stolen, and one of us is still in custody." Turns out we found out that that one that is still in custody is Jeremy Loffredo. You might recognize him. He's been on this show several times. He is a Gray Zone journalist. He does excellent work with documentaries. And he was taken and still being held. We now have an update to what he's being charged with. This came out
before I go any further here, I want to show you this guy, Andre X, just recently came out and posted this, and I forgot to clip it into my slideshow, but I'm just going to share the tweet with you. Here's Andre X, the guy who posted that original tweet that Kim showed. "There's a lot of speculation online because I was arrested with the contributor for the Gray Zone, a pro-Russian publication. I want to make something very clear. I do not support the fascist Russian regime, and I never will. I stand unequivocally against all imperialism. Russian opposition to U.S. imperialism doesn't make its own imperialism any better. I have been consistently opposing Russian imperialism in my work, and I haven't been to Russia in 3 years because of fear of political persecution and ideological oppression to the Kremlin." So I'm not going to read all this. This guy's a piece of shit. But this was my response: clown shit, complete clown shit. Because the reason I don't need to read any more of this is because he starts out with a blatant falsehood. The Gray Zone's a pro-Russian publication. You're a moron, dude. Get the fuck out of here. What are you doing in my feed? You're a piece of shit. Anyway, back to Kim Iverson.
Ynet News. They say American journalist disclosed secrets during Iran attack, police says. Jeremy Loffredo faces Israeli court after reporting Iranian missiles striking several Israeli air bases. U.S. fears possible diplomatic incident following reporters' actions. They say Jeremy Loffredo, 28, an independent American journalist, was arrested by police on suspicion of endangering national security after reporting on where missiles landed in the attack launched by Iran earlier this month, including the IDF's Nevatim air base and an intelligence base in central Israel.
So Jeremy was arrested a few days ago, and I just want to show you, I'm not going to show the whole thing, but Kim, I'm pretty sure YouTube pulled it down. I haven't looked, but Kim had the footage. I mean, maybe they didn't because they're allowing other people to show it, but I want you to see the footage Jeremy posted that got him arrested.
Loffredo had been arrested, taken in by the Israelis. This is the tweet that came out.
That's the same damn clip. I'm sorry. I don't know how. I didn't think it would allow you to do that, to be honest. It would allow you to. Here's the footage. Here's the actual footage.
Where last night Iran fired over 200 ballistic missiles in retaliation for the assassinations of Lebanese and Iranian political and military leadership. Since the missile strikes, Israeli authorities have attempted to downplay the significance of the attacks, censor the locations of missile impacts from media publication, and claim that Iran was targeting Israeli civilians. What I saw today, here in Israel, is clear evidence that Iran was targeting the same Israeli intelligence and military infrastructure that's been used over the past year to carry out brutal assassinations and attacks.
The morning after the missile strikes, news reports indicated that one of the principal targets was Nevatim Air Base. Nevatim Air Base, located deep in the Negev Desert, is the largest and most critical Air Force base in Israel. It's home to 3 squadrons of U.S.-supplied Lockheed Martin F-35 stealth fighter jets, which have played a pivotal role in Israel's year-long air assault on the besieged Gaza Strip. And as of 2 weeks ago, these F-35s are also spearheading relentless and devastating strikes in southern Lebanon, so far resulting in the deaths of 2,000 civilians. The base is also home to Wings of Zion, the Israeli equivalent of Air Force One. Video footage taken around 8 p.m. Israel time by Israelis and Palestinian Bedouins who live around the Negev desert show Nevatim Air Base being hit with at least 10 ballistic missiles.
So I may not agree with the Israelis' rationale behind, not allowing this kind of reporting to get out, because it basically confirms to the enemy that they were hit, which I don't think that they want to confirm. By the same token, you have to have a real picture of what's going on to make good decisions in a situation like this. So it's, again, I don't support it, but I think they have at least some kind of a valid rationale for, saying that this is not okay.
I drove 70 miles south to the highly sensitive Air Force installation, aiming to document the underreported and potentially embarrassing destruction. As I approached the military base, F-35 fighter jets were vertically landing at the base.
So imagine if, just to go back on that point so people don't think I'm a complete dickhead, imagine if someone hit American air bases and the U.S. press was covering for it and being like, "Oh no, it didn't happen." You would be conflicted, I think, a little more than in this situation where you're kind of like, "Well, we don't want to let the enemy know, but also we do want to know what's actually going on."
In all likelihood, on their way back from killing, 30 miles away in Gaza or 100 miles away in Lebanon. The road was separated from the base by more than a mile of desert and miles of steel fencing, so seeing any destruction was impossible. In the Negev desert, there are 46 Palestinian Bedouin villages. 80% of these villages are, quote, unrecognized by Israel and face constant demolition orders on any permanent or semi-permanent structure, resulting in most of their homes and buildings being built with light material like plywood or sheet metal. I went village to village asking about the missile strikes.
So Kim makes a great point about how, right there, about how, the argument against Palestine is they never build a good city. They never build anything up. Yeah, because they're not allowed to. As you just saw, they have these rickety little shacks because they're constantly being demolished and kicked out wherever they go. So they're not allowed to build something, really. But I want to give you a quick update to this case because there's actually some good news as of, I think, 2 days ago. Mr. Loffredo is out. It's somewhat good news. But hold on a second. Did I miss this? No.
Where last night Iran fired over.
No. Somewhat good news, but not. I'm conflicted because they did let him out. I mean, can you imagine if they had kept him and done tortured him or something, kept him? There's no way they could get away with that. No matter how much they try to call him pro-Russian or whatever kind of bullshit smears they're using to defame this guy. But let me just show you real quick this latest update to this story, which I think is a good one, and then we're going to move on to some other interesting stuff. So this is from breaking news. The account is Chigwara. I don't know how you pronounce that. Update: Gray Zone journalist Jeremy Loffredo released but banned from leaving Israel. So he's released, but he's held there on bail or what? Israeli forces assaulted and detained Gray Zone's Jeremy Loffredo and 4 other journalists. Jeremy Loffredo has now been charged with endangering national security and aiding and sharing information with the enemy for reporting. He has been released, but is banned from leaving Israel as Israeli authorities build a case against him. Host of Underground, Afshin Rattan's has the story on RT, and you're obviously going to get much more.
Afshin, always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for joining us. Afshin, what do you make of these reports coming out of the journalists sort of facing this brutal treatment by the IDF? Do you think it's plausible?
It's very much plausible. Jeremy Loffredo, a 28-year-old working at the Gray Zone. And the Gray Zone certainly came to prominence just in the past few days because one of its reporters, Liam Cosgrove, was with Matt Miller at the State Department. And the Biden administration spokesperson there saying to him, "You're just giving us a speech," because he was actually talking like a real journalist. The Gray Zone has been to the fore in exposing the lies of October the 7th, the fake rape claims and the fake claims about beheaded babies and babies cooked in ovens. That's
that's an interesting side note. The Gray Zone has been hitting the empire with real questions. That State Department incident he just pointed out, which I'm sure you've seen. If not, look it up. But Liam Cosgrove actually asked the Matt Miller guy at the State Department a legit question. And to top it all off, Max and Aaron just released that. Well, it was really Max, I think. They just released that documentary about the propaganda around October 7th. So let me let this guy finish.
Max Blumenthal, the founder of it, Anya Parampil, Kit Clarenberg, Aaron Mate, and Wyatt Reed. Wyatt Reed was exposed by the Washington Post, exposed as being an Iranian asset when he's nothing of the kind. He was working at Press TV. Presumably all of this is all passed around so that he would be targeted, particularly because the other journalists were released. My understanding is he has now been released after his torture and kidnapping, but has to remain there, and they're taking all the details out of his cell phone. You know, the United States, London, these countries, I mean, they're used to killing journalists. I mean, there's an award at RT for Khaled Al-Khatib, and just last summer, NATO weaponry killed Rostislav Zhurevlev in the Ukraine proxy war. They do this, don't they? It's not really Israel per se, although Israel has killed, using British, American, and European Union weaponry, more journalists than in any recorded conflict in history, as far as we know. There were more journalists killed in the past few days. But the way they work is to persecute journalists and filter out, have filtering mechanisms to have only people who think the right way who can become journalists in NATO countries. And failing all of that, they torture them, and failing all of that, they kill them.
Actually, what do you think the justification is for arresting Jeremy? I mean, at the end of the day, those journalists were detained at the northern West Bank checkpoint, where, you know, they're allowed to be there. What could be the explanation that they're going to come up with?
Yeah, they're fighting a losing battle, these NATO powers, arming the Genocide Joe proxy war of Netanyahu's, aren't they? Because they failed. The information war is lost. But the torture and kidnapping of Loffredo shows they haven't stopped. They're still killing the journalists because they know they've lost the war at home. I mean, some thought that the Ukraine proxy war, in which the United States, NATO countries in Western Europe and Britain, they'd won the information war successfully over Ukraine, banning television stations like RT, of course. But even then, Blinken came to the podium, Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, saying, no, a lot of people in the global South are not believing that there aren't any Nazis in Ukraine because of RT. And in the same way, they have to do this, don't they, in the West Bank? They have to attack journalists because they're desperate that only the NATO version of events, the Zionist version of events that claims Israel has a right to self-defense. Every beheaded baby by British, American, EU weaponry in Gaza is a matter of self-defense and not actually a genocide. So that's why they got Jeremy Loffredo.
It's a sad time in America, and so many people are wrapped up in the partisan stuff. It almost doesn't even matter what's true. People, you know, they can use Trump as a justification for almost anything. And just to hammer home how bad the media has gotten, I wanted to highlight this tweet of mine from a couple days ago, and I got to give credit where credit is due. I got it from watching an interview that Primo Radical did with Jimmy Dore. So This is from Primo Radical pointed out this article from about a year ago, and the headline is Republicans float a quiet conspiracy theory that Biden won't be on the ballot. Look at the date on this. October 26th, 2023. And so, just real quick before we move on here, President Joe Biden announced in April that he's running for re-election. This is something I've pointed out pretty regularly on this show. His campaign and its fundraising entities have a combined $91 million in the bank, and he has hired key political staffers to help him helm his 2024 re-election campaign. That right there is why they crowbarred Kamala Harris into the mix, because they can't give up that money. They had already raised a bunch of money around Biden. And since Harris was already on the ticket, they can easily transfer that money over to her. They didn't have to start from scratch. So anyway, the media is full of shit. I hope that Jeremy Loffredo gets real justice. I hope that real journalists actually rally behind him and they don't keep resorting to this pathetic Russian bullshit like this Andre X guy did. What a weak, who came to him? What a weak ass bitch that guy is. Oh my God. That's his response. Oh, the president's pro-Russian. What's
your name, scumbag?
His name's Andre X, apparently. So I got a bunch of good stuff from here. I think actually this week I kind of larded up the maybe more covered stuff at the beginning of the show, the front end of the show. So this next piece, I would like to talk about Donald Trump. He did a recent appearance on Andrew Schultz's podcast, and these guys, I mean, I said this with Theo Vaughn, but these guys do a way better job than the corporate press. Nowhere has anyone really asked Trump in detail about the shots that were taken at him. And these guys not only do that, but they also follow up and make him like finish his answers. They're better journalists than 99% of the corporate press. So we're going to start with this first clip is just him talking about that attempt. And like I said, them kind of really pushing him to get some good answers out of him.
There was this assassination attempt. They hit you. Headshot.
Yeah.
You survive.
Yeah. It was not a good feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you
Ear
scared?
looks better,
by the way.
No, I'm not scared. Yeah.
So one of the things I did notice, if you look closely at this footage, because I've always been curious about this, like what happened to the ear. And I'm sure that Trump is rich, so I'm sure a plastic surgeon came in and like reconstructed it because he's going to be on TV. And it does, if you watch his right ear, which is the one that hit because he turned his head and the bullet sailed by his right side when he turned his head. It looks like that ear is a little bit longer than the other one. And this is just, for entertainment purposes, only my conspiracy theory, but, not my conspiracy theory, but I've always been curious about that. Like, you don't see a visible wound on his ear. And I'm sure that, like I said, he has the best surgeons that put it back together. But it does look, if you look closely, like there might be something up with that right ear.
I have an attitude. It's interesting. It is what it is. Does that make any sense to you guys?
Yeah.
You do what you have to do. I felt it was important to go back. A lot of people, I guess, agreed with me because it was over 100. I think they said 108,000 people in the end. That's a lot of people.
Terrible.
And I had no guitar. If you have a guitar, it's easy. When you don't have a guitar.
I thought you said Qatar.
I have guitar. I do have that. They like me very much. But I don't have a guitar.
Yeah, you have the
right?
guitar, yes.
So anyway, but that was it was amazing. I mean, I like it when.
So the argument that Trump is somehow like demented or something, listen to the guy. He's clearly sharp. Like he just made a joke about Qatar.
Somebody like Elon, who has a lot to lose, is willing to do what's right.
Yeah.
Some people know it's right to do, and I'm not just talking about endorsements and all, but they don't want to do things because they're
They don't want it to cost them opportunities.
The word is
future.
they want to be politically correct, and
Yeah.
actually they're doing a bad thing. I think for themselves and for a lot of people they may represent.
Okay, opening line when you walk out there.
So right.
I mean,
I was wondering what you were going to say, and as a comedian, you can seize the moment.
Yeah.
And
he was a hell of a comedian, by the way.
I appreciate
That's
that.
what the word is.
So I hear you go, I see the video and you go up there and you go, as I was saying.
Right.
Crowd goes fucking berserk or what?
They went, I would say, crazy.
Yeah.
Just a quick side note. If you ever see me go full screen like that, it's probably because I got up to get a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And I wasn't
Biggest
sure.
pop you've experienced?
Yeah, I'll tell you how, you have this as a comedian or even not as a comedian, just when you make a speech or you make some very serious statement.
Yeah.
So we're at a very serious and somber thing
Event,
because
yeah.
we're celebrating a life that is no longer with us. And I wasn't sure whether or not that thing, I had it in my mind for a long time. Once I said I'm going back, which I wanted to go back immediately, I wanted to actually finish my speech, okay? When I got up, I said, let me finish my speech. But I'm surrounded by like 8 very large, strong men and a very wonderful woman. You saw that.
Yeah.
But I'm surrounded by guys. They said, sir, no way, go. And I have blood pouring down, but I really wanted to finish my speech. I said, I think I had like 50,000. I had a lot of people there.
Yeah.
And, when I went down, it was sort of like embarrassed. I said, I went down in front of all these people. That was my first thing. I don't want to be embarrassed.
You were embarrassed that you went down after being shot?
Well, you weren't exactly sure what the hell was happening at first,
Yeah. But also, you came back up with the fist raised. That's one of the hardest pictures.
But I was also,
Did you hear them say he's down, or were you just
so when I got hit, I assume that it's funny.
Is it?
When I was down there, it is sort of strange. I guess now it's a little bit, we can smile a little bit, but not really, because the 3 guys, 1 killed, two very badly hit.
Yeah.
But when I went down, I had total realization. It wasn't a surreal. They talked about a surreal. That could be a surreal experience, like when something happens, some traumatic thing happens. People they lose focus. They have no idea where they are. I've heard many people where that happens. Something really terrible happens that. It was just the opposite. I knew exactly what had happened. I got shot in the ear, and Secret Service thought I may have been shot. Actually, they were pretty sure that I was shot all over because there was a lot of blood. Just a little fact, if you get shot in the ear, it's the bloodiest place. It bleeds more than anything else.
Oh, wow.
Now, it's good to be shot this way, not that way. That way, that's bad. So if I don't turn, I would be doing this right now, guaranteed.
Guys, I got some stand-up
That's
shows
the one
coming up.
question that I wish they would have asked him is, hey, your ear looks good. What happened? Like, did they do surgery on you? What did they do to reconstruct your ear? But there's a lot of good stuff in here, and you should go watch the whole thing because it's actually a pretty interesting interview. But they keep pressing with him on this assassination stuff, and they actually get some pretty good answers, a little bit more out of him in this second piece here. And this one's a little bit longer, but we'll break it up a bit
to take you out.
So I'm going to give you some big breaking news, right?
Love that.
Because I know the kind of show and it's entertainment, but it's also very serious. I mean, I get the whole picture. And you know what? If it was just funny stuff, you wouldn't have the success you've got, to be honest with you, right?
Yeah.
It's nice to intersperse it, but I'll give you something. So, first of all, I have great...
That's actually a great point. I think that's one of the reasons Howard Stern was popular back when he was good, is because he would do these funny bits, but he would also have like serious interviews and serious commentary on social
respect for the Secret Service. And the guys that were with me, I went down and I did a good job going down because those bullets were winging over my head. If I would have been up for another couple of seconds, I also wouldn't have been here. But I didn't consider that as...
I love how Trump is like the way he described it. I did a good job going down. Everything he does. I did a good job going.
Lucky as turning to the right at that it was like 1/16 of a second was the only time that I was safe, essentially.
Right.
If I would have gone a little further, I would have been hit. If I would have gone not as far, I would have been hit. I mean, I had like this little tiny moment. And the amazing thing is the sign is always on my left and it's always at the end and I only use it 20% of the time, maybe even less than that.
And
this was
time
a
it's on the
chart.
right.
This was a chart on immigration because I have the record. I did a great job in immigration. They are not doing too well right now.
Stay on the breaking news. Stay on the breaking news.
So here's the breaking. So you have,
See, I got to give these guys so much credit because they do such a good job, like keeping him on topic.
this shooter, and you have another shooter, right? So this shooter had 3 or so cell phones. The FBI's never gotten them opened.
Wow.
The other shooter, 3 apps, they call them. And I believe they were foreign-based apps, from what I understand.
From what I understand, yeah, because that's what they're telling him, of course.
Oh, wow.
They haven't opened them, and they're foreign-based. And you hear all about Iran, because I was rough with Iran, but I want to see Iran do great. I want to see Iran do great.
Yeah.
But
That, to me, is the breaking news here. I want to see Iran do great because there's a lot of people, I think, that, rightfully are critical of Trump and are like, oh, we're going to get war with him too. But listen to his tone on that. I want to see Iran do great. I want to see Iran do good. He's, he speaks off the cuff. And I think, again, that's one of the reasons they hate him.
I want to stop all the killing and all this. And I was rough on Iran, and they supposedly have a hit on me. In fact, I think it takes great courage for you people to be interviewing me, because it could be now.
When he talks about this, I like how he listen to the language he's using there. Maybe I'm being over analytical here, but he's like, supposedly.
Now,
Yeah. Well, we didn't know that before we got in here.
No, if you would have known that, you might not have done this.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, this is a good way of me getting the interview to be shorter. All of a sudden, he's going to say, okay, that's it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Again, does that sound like a senile guy who's like completely out of it? Not even close. I don't know how people can get away with painting this guy as being at this level of dementia that Biden was at. He's an older guy, so he may have moments, but you listen to this, and this doesn't seem like it was edited in any way. It's pretty raw. I mean, I wouldn't doubt that there are portions that they took out, but
They have 3 apps, and foreign-based, 2 of them, maybe 3 of them are foreign-based. They haven't opened them yet. Why wouldn't you open them when you hear about Iran or when you hear about, foreign? Then the other one had 6 cell phones, and they haven't opened. Now, it's very hard to open a cell phone. Only Apple can do it in theory, unless you have somebody. But they had no problem getting the J6 people's cell phones open. They opened their cell phones very quickly.
That's fair.
We have 2 countries in a way. What's happening here is very bad. It's very dangerous. We almost had one because I had the greatest economy in the history of our country.
There it is again. The greatest economy in the history of our country.
And people were coming together. We almost had one, but we really do have 2 right now, and it's a shame because I think we'll get them together. Success will bring us together, but they should get those phones opened. And, when there's an assassination attempt on a former president who's now, I'm proud to say, leading in all the polls against the Democrat, I don't know which one is running. You don't know what the hell's going on. I'm the only one that had to run against 2. I run against 2 Democrats, but this is a first. We create a lot of firsts. Usually you run against somebody. Here I run. I had the debate. I was way up on him. Yeah. And then they say, let's put this is like with Dana White, a fighter. So you're fighting, and the one guy's getting killed. And they say, that's okay. Let's put in another fighter to finish it off, okay? Yeah. And you're fighting. You say, hey, wait a minute. I have a brand new fighter in here.
WWE.
I spent $150 million on beating Biden. And then all of a sudden, I hear that they're going to overthrow him. It was a coup. I mean, it really was. But I would like...
I just showed you that tweet again, the MSNBC article. Republicans float the conspiracy theory that Biden won't be on the ticket come November. And here we are with that conspiracy theory, a complete reality. Less than a year later, I think the original article from MSNBC was posted on like October 26th. So less than a year later, that conspiracy theory is manifest reality.
Them to open up these apps and find out what's in there. And so he had six cell phones. Who has 6 cell phones? Mm-hmm. Having 6 cell phones is weird. I have cell phones. If I ever have 2, it's like a lot.
Yeah.
He had 6 cell phones. Why does he have them? And why haven't they opened up those cell phones?
So if you had to
and
guess.
It's different. If you're a drug dealer I think it's terrible in many ways, but I guess from another standpoint, Apple, the primary group, people buy those phones because they will never open them for any reason. But they got them open when.
So more than anything, too, I think this is like a good credit to Apple. Good job, Apple. Like, you shouldn't open the phones for any reason, for anything, unless it's something. I mean, if it's something this serious, imagine if someone tried to assassinate Barack Obama. Like, you would want people in that phone. Totally. And same with Kamala or anyone. I don't care what their party is. If someone's taking shots at a presidential candidate, their phone is game to be opened by Apple. That's a massive issue, like that affects the world on a crazy level. So that is understandable, but anything beneath that, I think is no.
J6, they opened up their phones, but they don't open. And this is big stuff. This is an assassination attempt, and it could involve other countries.
There was that San Bernardino shooter that they hacked. The FBI was able to hack into the phone. Apple didn't give it up, but they were able to hack in.
There are some people in the world, very few, that have an ability to sometimes be able to hack in.
Got it.
Very rarely, actually.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing when you think that with all the genius, you almost can't do it. But Apple has a key, and the key is open. I mean, they can do it immediately. Yeah. But they don't do it, and they don't do it, and that's one of the reasons that, like, I hate to say it, drug lords feel very confident that they'll never be exposed, and they use their cell phones, their Apple phones, and maybe it's that way with other companies. I don't know. They have Samsung, they have other companies.
I mean, here's the thing. Even if you can't hack into a drug dealer's phone, there are so many other ways, there are so many other methods that the U.S. security state has to catch them. They can intercept their messages. They can get shit from the towers. There's so much you can do with that, even without hacking into the phone. So again, I'm not for it.
But it's very hard. Apple's very strong on that. But when it comes to the assassination of a president, leading candidate, former president, all that, I think the rules have to go out and they have to open those things and they have to find out. And
in terms of national security,
some people would say you have to either punish Apple or you have to get somebody that can do it. But in terms of national security, so the one guy has 6 phones, lots of messages to people. Who are those people he's calling when he's hiding behind a bush?
So if you had to...
I'm sure it's Iran, right? That might be one of the reasons they're not letting them get into his phone. I mean, it's speculation for entertainment purposes.
I'm sure you've thought about this a lot. It's an assassination attempt. If you had to guess, who do you think is responsible?
These are great questions. What the hell? I don't get these questions from the fake news.
Yeah. Rosie O'Donnell.
Trump agrees with me. Isn't that great?
Like Deface the Nation. They have the woman on Brennan. She's on Deface the Nation. She was terrible with the way she handled J.D. Vance, who did a great job the other night.
He did do a great job.
But I don't get questions like that. Did you ever hear of the show? Deface, ladies and gentlemen, it's Donald Trump on Deface the Nation. It's called Face the Nation. They hate me. No, they spend millions of dollars.
They would name a show that?
Oh, I see. You didn't hear of it. That's good. They spend millions of dollars on the name CBS. Yeah. And then I come along and I say it's Face the Nation. Or Meet the Fake Press. Meet the Press.
You're good at this.
I say Meet the Fake Press. Yeah. And they spend all this money, and then I say it once, and it goes to millions of people. Yeah. But no, they are fake. But some of these questions are much better.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm honored.
Much better.
You still haven't answered, though.
That was the best dodge of the question.
That's your second best dodge in your life.
You almost charmed us out of it.
I'm trying to get out of it.
All right, fair enough.
Well, look.
How could you watching stuff like this? How could you not like this guy? He has so much candor. He's like, I'm trying to get out of it.
If you look at assassinations or attempts, first of all, you realize I'm in a very dangerous business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is crazy.
Because
this is like one of the. Okay, you have to listen to this because this is a fantastic point that I never thought about in a million years. I never would have made these comparisons, but listen to the numbers that they go through right here. This is
1/10. Think of this: 1/10 of 1% of auto races die.
Yep.
Bull riders. I think that's pretty dangerous, right?
Yeah.
I don't know much about it, but I think I wouldn't want to be on one of those suckers.
No.
I see them flying off, and the hoof is like an inch from the eye, and when it hits the eye, you're gone,
Game
right?
over. Yeah.
And they are very, well, it's about the same. 1/10 of 1%.
Yeah.
And other things. It's never much more than that. That's sort of maxed out, I think.
Yeah.
Race car drivers, bull riders, I think that's pretty much tough.
Yeah.
UFC fighters, it's none. I don't think anyone's ever actually...
Not in UFC. In MMA or boxing,
Maybe.
unfortunately,
It must
there was
be.
those tragic events. Yeah.
Amazingly, boxers die a lot. But UFC, Dana tells me it's a safe sport. I say, to me, it's much rougher. But, it's pretty amazing. They've never, in UFC, they've never lost. And they run a great operation. Nobody's died. But with presidents, it's like a substantial percentage.
Way higher than we realize.
When you look at Lincoln and Kennedy and this and that.
Attempts,
you go
Reagan.
through McKinley.
Yep, Garfield.
You look at a lot of people. I'm in a very dangerous
business.
Profession.
Yeah.
I call it a profession.
Yes.
A
I like
dangerous profession.
I like that.
I'm sitting with you guys. You have a very nice, safe life. Me?
Yeah.
So, no, if you said 5%.
I think he called us soft.
No,
Yeah,
but think
I'm fine
of
with
it.
that.
Yeah, but think of it. 5%.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's high.
That's a lot.
I think, yeah.
So that's an interesting moment of enlightenment that I never thought about. A lot of politicians, a lot of our presidents have been assassinated or had assassination attempts leveled at them, and that's crazy to think about. He's actually right. Statistically, he's less safe than like an Indy race car driver. But this next clip is really good, and this whole interview, if you're into absorbing this kind of stuff and you're curious about it, I definitely recommend watching the whole thing because it's really good from front to back. But Trump talks about his rambling right here, and I thought this was so great. He has a name for it. He calls it the weave. It's like the same.
I do a thing called the weave. Yeah. And there are those that are fair that say, this guy is so genius. And then others would say, oh, he rambled. I don't ramble. If I start a story, what you do is you weave things and you do it. You have to have certain things. You need an extraordinary memory because you have to come back to where you started.
Yes.
You always, a weave is only good
They
if
don't
you
give
come
you credit
back.
for that.
Yeah, it's true.
Then you could go all the way over here and then
I
get
can
back.
go so far here or there, and I can come back to exactly where I started. Now, someday when you don't come back to where you started,
You're Biden.
then you say, no, but the weave is the way. When you're telling like a story, I was telling a story at a rally the other day in front of thousands of people, and I started off, and then
You were weaving them up.
something in the story,
Bro.
I actually mentioned Air Force One. It was Air Force One was there. So I mentioned Air Force One, and then I said how I got $1.6 billion off the price of Air Force One. So, but then you have to come back to the story. Where was Air Force One taking you?
As I
So
was
anyway, I do a weave. I call it the weave. And some people think it's so genius, but the bad people, what they say is, he was rambling.
Yeah.
It's not a ramble. There's no rambling.
This is a
with it.
weave.
This is a weave. I call it the weave. Good name. I'm not sure. That's another name. We had fake news.
Yeah,
We came up
yeah.
with lots of names.
Yeah.
But
So I got a couple more clips for you from this interview. This one, so near the end, Akash Singh actually gets really kind of goes into the weeds on some stuff that I think is important. And one of those issues is abortion. And they talk about abortion. And, the way that Akash approaches it is actually very cool. He kind of comes at it as a moderate type thing. But in addition to abortion, he asks him about, his rhetoric, the Trumpian rhetoric, because that's really what he's most famous for, is just saying things off the cuff. But let's start with this piece about abortion, because this is actually another good moment of clarity for people who, keep hearing all these falsehoods about where this guy stands.
You think went a little bit too far. If you feel the state goes a little bit too far, will you use a little influence and say, hey, maybe Brennan says we can make
I
exceptions?
would. Oh, no, I won't back it. I won't back it. I think
Okay.
I
think that's important for moderates to hear. That's why I want to give you the
I won't
opportunity to
back
say
it.
that.
No, some
Especially
states
for
say
women
no
to
weeks.
hear.
Yeah.
But they're all changing
Mhm.
because the people in the state won't stand for that. There are some states that say, under no circumstances, you have a daughter and she's raped by the worst, most violent criminal in the country, and you cannot get, her. You cannot take
She
her
has to live with
and
that for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
she got to live with this.
Yeah.
And, the father is a monster. He's from an insane asylum because he killed 50 people.
Yeah.
And you're going to have that baby?
Yeah.
And I can't
You have
believe...
to have empathy for that.
No,
Yeah,
no,
you
I
have to.
can't
Yeah.
believe that people are forced to do that.
Yes.
And you have a tiny, right now,
Yeah.
it used to be a much bigger segment.
Yeah.
So hold on a sec. I want to take an improvised sidebar here, because what he just said, I can't believe there are states where people are still forced to do that. I want to Google this real quick. States where women are forced to have rapists' baby. I don't. Maybe it's not that prominent anymore. This is from 2024. Let's look at this real quick. Just quick sidebar on that, because that's an interesting thing to note, that he's obviously, again, so nearly 65,000 U.S. rape victims could not get an abortion in their state. Dobbs' decision, the data demonstrates that abortion is likely made impossible for most victims of rape. Figures come as rape exemptions have fallen out of favor amongst anti-abortion activists. The large number of estimated rape-related pregnancies, abortion. So it doesn't say specifically what states, it just says kind of a number. But I know that there used to be, I wish I had bookmarked it, but there was a state, there was a kind of like a map thing, that had like, oh, here's a map of all the states that still make rape women have rapist babies. Maybe that's gotten to a point where it's just politically untenable. I hope that's the case, but I'll have to do some research on that, because that's saying, still a lot of women are forced to do it, but they don't really give many specifics about.
No, I think I've done a good job in a lot of ways, because I've convinced people that you just can't do that.
No, that's important.
It's always been complex. It's always been tough, but we've come a long way with that issue. But just in a nutshell, bringing it back to the states and giving a vote of the people is where they wanted it 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago.
So what he's saying here too, the reason I'm not against that is because if you think about it, women won't want to live in states, professional women, and of which there are a lot, won't want to live in a state that limits their rights like that. And those states' economies will lose out in massive ways. If you look at the difference between like Seattle and Montgomery, Alabama, for example, or anywhere in Louisiana versus like Austin, Texas, you can see the economic differences that these kind of policies will create. So let the states shoot themselves in the foot.
And then they got a little complex. They talked about the length and the number of
but
weeks.
with protections, with protections for women. And
to me, you have to. Ronald Reagan, a long time ago, was with the same 3 protections.
Yeah.
He said he wanted, for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. And that was a long time ago.
Okay, you have a very busy day. Before you go, what would you like your legacy to be?
Okay, so let me jump to this last clip here, and this one has a couple good moments in it. So this last clip I got, Trump kind of roasts Joe Biden, but then Akash asks him to tone about his rhetoric and the tone of things he says, and the whole thing is interesting. So check this out.
After that, we're not going to need it to. This is the most important election in the history of our country. Vote for this most important election. And then if you don't want to vote, we're going to have elections, but you don't have to vote because it's going to go along swimmingly.
That's how I interpreted it.
Yeah, that's how everybody.
So right there, I kind of cut in a little bit late, but he's clarifying one of his comments that the Democrats have kind of taken out of context and said, like, he's going to be a dictator. He's saying this election's so important. Anyway, I don't know if that's a dodge or not, but they kind of seem to think
that's how they interpreted it too.
Yes. They know what
you got to vote this time because we can't wait 4 years. Because you know what? In another 4 years, like we've just had with this clown that's a president, that's just a clown, a foolish man. Don't forget, he was a stupid man 25 years ago. He was never a smart man. He's run many times. Isn't it amazing? He's run many times, and he gets it when he's in serious decline, okay? But anyway, so everybody knows that.
Okay.
And that's what I meant by it.
Yeah.
It means we got to fix it.
Yeah.
And then it's going to work beautifully. It's going to run beautifully. We're going to have elections every 2 years, and every 4 years it's going to be great.
I just want to give you a chance to say that to
And what
Myers.
was your second
And if I
point?
could ask one question. Everybody I speak to, every race, creed, whatever, they don't just like you, they love you. And I talk to people on both sides about your policies, and a lot of people that like your policies. The China tariff that's still in place right now is an example of policy that people love. I think sometimes what we love about you as comedians is you shoot from the hip, but then that gets twisted into this rhetoric that adds gasoline onto everything. So the one thing I would like, as I think a moderate person, is maybe if you get elected, would you be a little bit more mindful of how powerful your words are for better and for worse?
I will. And I'm going to think of you every time.
Let's go. I might actually vote.
I'm going to be thinking of you. No, it's true. I mean, I understand that. Sometimes they say, oh, could you be a little bit more? But you're doing a lot of things, and you're solving a lot of problems. I stopped wars that nobody will ever know about, they won't write about, but countries that were fighting each other and didn't affect us much, but they did business with us. I called up 2 countries that have fought for thousands of years, killing each other for years. And I said, you guys are at it again. I heard it was going to start up. I stopped it when I first came in. And I said, listen, here's the story. If you go to war with each other, I can give you the details, but I don't even want to bother because it's nice now. I said, you're not going to do any more business with the United States. I'm going to cut you off 100%. And if you do get through, I'm going to charge you 200% tariffs. You won't be able to survive. So work it out. Work it out.
So again, just to kind of wrap this up nicely, I'm going to get into why I'll just be honest again. I want Trump to win this cycle. Nick Cruz of Revolutionary Blackout Network makes the case that I've been making much more eloquently than I've been making it. And we're going to get to that in a couple minutes. So I got a couple more segments coming up. This next one is about the Nordstream pipeline. Quick update on that. And then I got a really great piece with Scott Ritter on RBN, if you didn't catch that. And then Cheech and Chong on Bill Maher, and to wrap up some Ryan Long jokes for you. So this next piece is about the Nordstream pipeline. And I covered this and actually did a piece about a year ago. But I'm going to start by just having Glenn Greenwald bring you up to speed for those of you who might not kind of know what's going on.
I'm going to give you an update on a story that we have covered for a long time, but that has been mostly forgotten, and we haven't covered it for a while either. As you recall, in late 2022, a pipeline that was built by Russia and Germany to connect Russia and Germany with the idea of allowing Russia to sell cheap natural gas to Western Europe through Germany, a massive pipeline that took a lot of money and a long time to build, was exploded. It was just blown up and rendered unusable. It was just sitting at the bottom of the sea. And aside from being an act of extreme industrial terrorism, you just blow up a gas infrastructure and oil infrastructure, then also it was a major environmental disaster. Remember how we're supposed to care about the environment? This is one of the worst environmental disasters in years, with all kinds of natural gas leaking from that platform that was transmitting huge amounts back and forth. And amazingly, at the time when this question arose, oh, who might have done this? Who might have blown up this Nord Stream 2 pipeline? Let's remember that the U.S., even before the war in Ukraine, wanted that pipeline gone. In fact, it was Trump, despite always being accused of being a Russian agent, who led the way in trying to badger the Germans and Western Europeans from not buying natural gas from Russia by saying, we pay for your defense. Why should you buy gas from Russia instead of from us? And their answer was, well, it's much cheaper to buy it from Russia. Russia's much closer. Their natural gas is produced more cheaply. But Trump said, we don't care. We're paying for your defense. You should buy it from us, even if it's more expensive. So the U.S. hated this pipeline for a while. When Biden got into office,
Glenn does such a good job kind of laying this stuff out across administrations, because that's really the most important part of these kinds of issues, because something like this spans multiple administrations, and most topics do, especially if it's an administration that's not in for a complete 8-year, 2 consecutive terms. But let's keep going.
On this wave of anti-Russian hatred, and then the war in Ukraine started, they basically explicitly, Biden and Victoria Nuland came out and said, if the Russians invade Ukraine, you can say goodbye to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. So the U.S. threatened repeatedly in public to blow it up. And then 9 months later, when it was blown up, the Western media was like, oh my God, who might have done this? A gigantic mystery.
Just to go back real quick, again, I'm probably going to do this in every segment, at least one point. I want to take you back to the press on Biden a year ago. Just real quick, let's revisit this one more time, real quick. This is an article from a year ago. Republicans float a quiet conspiracy theory that Biden won't be on the ballot. So that's the level of honesty you're dealing with in today's media. Here's the second clip from the Glenn piece where he kind of talks about the Seymour Hersh report that originally came out that kind of basically pointed to who the real culprits were versus the kind of Western press's excuses or their own little narrative that they concocted. This is really good.
In fact, as we're about to show you, they tried to imply strongly that a leading suspect was Putin, that for some reason Putin decided to blow up his own pipeline. The one the Russians built, on the one on which the Russians were relying for their future economic prosperity for decades to come. That, it might have been just Putin who blew it up.
Surely you can't be serious. I am serious.
Seymour Hersh, who is one of the most decorated journalists on the planet, if not the most decorated, he's won 2 Pulitzer Prizes for his reporting about massacres in Vietnam and then Abu Ghraib. I think he's won 6 Polk Awards for investigative reporting, more than any other person. Reported at the time, based on his decades-long Rolodex of deeply implanted sources of the intelligence agency, that it was the United States.
So that's a great point right there that a lot of people don't think about. Because of the tenure that Seymour Hersh has as a reporter, he has a long list of contacts in the intelligence community, which is how he's able to get these scoops that the mainstream press is not getting, because they're being fed everything they report on directly from the current administration.
That was responsible. Here's his article back in February of 2023. He said how America took out the Nord Stream pipeline. The New York Times called it a, quote, mystery, but the United States executed a covert sea operation that was kept secret until now, and he kind of detailed what he had learned. And of course, all the people in the know, still in the corporate media, who haven't been expelled, like Seymour Hersh, who don't have a tiny infinitesimal fraction of the journalistic achievements he has and wouldn't compile a fraction of it even if they live to be 1,000 years old.
My absolute favorite thing about Glenn Greenwald is the absolute contempt he has for the corporate press. And it's well-deserved contempt, but it just gives him a fire that is undeniable.
Mocked him and said that was some weird conspiracy theory. Today there was a report from a publication called Politiken, which is an outlet in Scandinavia, which is where a lot of these investigations were taking place. And in fact, it took place right off a Danish island. That was where the pipeline was blown up. And so it was the Danish conducting the investigation. And up until now, the Danish have refused to release the findings of that investigation. I wonder why. Probably not because they found that Putin did it. It must be because it contains conclusions that would be damaging to the West. But here today from that publication It's actually from last week. It's September 26, 2024. It was published in the original Danish, and it's now been translated. The title, "A Small Danish Island Got Caught in a Major Political Sabotage Case." Quote, "In September 2022, the explosions of the Nordstream gas pipelines attracted enormous international attention. At first, everyone believed Russia was behind the sabotage." Let me say, not everyone. A lot of us knew that was completely idiotic and scoffed at it and laughed at it as one of the dumbest pieces of propaganda imaginable. But a lot of people did believe that Russia was somehow behind the sabotage. The article goes on, but now Germany
pipeline
is searching for a Ukrainian diving group on a pleasure yacht, while Denmark and Sweden have closed their investigations. Quote, "It's a huge case and the biggest act of terror in this area since World War II," said Soren Thiem Andersen, administrator of Kristiansund. "In the beginning, we didn't know what the police were looking for, and there were no ship names to relate to. But it does affect us, of course. If there has been a boat with explosives right over there without us noticing anything." On the phone, that was a quote from Anne-Marie Koford. On the phone, her husband, the harbor master, John Anker Nielsen, said he provided the police with information from the payment machine where ships dock. But the machine contains no names, and he only spoke with the police a few times. A journalist also showed the harbor master a picture that didn't ring any bells. For the first few days, the harbor master claimed he, quote, wasn't allowed to say a word. But today, John Anker Nielsen can reveal that 4 or 5 days before the Nord Stream explosion, he was with the rescue service from Kristiansund because there were some ships there and their radios were turned off. It turned out that they were U.S. Navy ships. When the rescue service approached them, he was asked by the naval command to turn back. Therefore, the harbor master leans toward the theory, as suggested by, among others, the American Star journalist Seymour Hersh, although without evidence, that the U.S. was behind the sabotage.
So a couple things about this that I think are interesting. First, the press doesn't realize that by downplaying something like this and kind of like brushing it off like, oh, someone did it, we don't know who, it totally defeats other narratives they have, like the one about climate change, where it's like, listen, I'm not a climate change denialist. I can see with my own eyes that climate change is real. But you can also see that there's a concerted effort to do what Naomi Klein called the the crisis doctrine, or what's that book called? God damn it, I'm drawing a blank now. It's the crisis. I think it's the crisis doctrine or something like that, or the shock doctrine. Sorry, there it is, the shock doctrine. So yes, climate change is a crisis. We do need to act on it. We do need to, not burn up all our fossil fuels and stuff, but also the idea that like the world's going to be underwater in a couple of years was provably false. Al Gore made predictions but by them allowing something like this, which is like arguably one of the biggest environmental catastrophes in history, and just kind of like downplaying it and acting like it's not a big deal, I don't think they realize that by doing that, they're helping to back the mounting evidence behind what I just said, that climate change is being hyped as part of like the shock doctrine type premise.
Now, at first they tried to blame the Russians, but then they tried to pretend that it was the Ukrainians. So let me just say, the country that has the greatest interest in this besides Russia is Germany. It was a shared pipeline between the two countries. The Germans built a lot of it. They invested a lot of it. They were depending upon it to provide them with natural gas, cheap natural gas. Whoever blew up the pipeline committed an act of industrial sabotage and terrorism against Germany, not just Russia. And yet the Germans, being kind of like the British, always just very compliant, complicit, being told what to do, have expressed no real interest in finding out who did it, probably because they're...
Another thing I love about Greenwald, I will say this repeatedly throughout the rest of my, history doing this show, but America was built on a fuck you to authority. America's roots are fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Basically, the Rage Against the Machine shit, but a lot more legit. Like they actually took up arms against the British and said, no, we're going to do this our way. And that is part of the fabric of what it means to be an American. And I love people like Glenn who kind of point that out, because European culture, no disrespect, Europe, we come from you. I get it. You've been around longer, that's for sure. And especially the French, hats off to the French for being the kind of like militant revolutionaries they are. But Europe does have a history of being a little bit more subservient. They don't have a First Amendment, for example, while the United States was built on a complete paradigm of fuck you, freedom, to put it in the most basic terms possible that people who drink a lot of Mountain Dew will appreciate.
Already know who did it. Here was the Wall Street Journal in August, just a couple months ago. Quote, a drunken evening, a rented yacht, the real story of a Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. Quote, private businessmen funded the shoestring operation, which was overseen by a top general. President Zelensky approved the plan, then tried unsuccessfully to call it off. So they started to blame a rogue unit of Ukrainians who didn't even have the approval of President Zelensky. Quote, the Ukrainian operation cost around $300,000, according to people who participated in it. It involved a small rental yacht with a 6-member crew, including trained civilian divers. One was a woman whose presence helped create the illusion that they were a group of friends on a pleasure cruise. Quote, I always laugh when I read media speculation about some huge operation involving secret services, submarines, drones, and satellites. One officer who was involved in the plot said, quote, the whole thing was born out of a night of heavy boozing and the iron determination of a handful of people who had their guts to risk their lives for their country. By November 2022, German investigators believed Ukrainians were behind the explosion. Ukrainian officials who participated in or
Germany's like, let's just blame the people we're dumping weapons to.
Are familiar with the plot to believe it would be impossible to put any of the commanding officers on trial because no evidence exists beyond conversations among top officials who were at least initially all in agreement about wanting to blow up the pipeline. Quote, none of them will testify lest they incriminate themselves, one former officer said. So apparently, according to that theory that they tried to push, it was a tiny little band of drunken Ukrainians who on their own just decided to take a little boat, dive under the water, and engage in this extremely complex task of blowing up a very sophisticated underwater pipeline built by two industrialized countries, Russia and Germany, and simply nobody can prosecute them because no one has any evidence.
So when that story came out, the headline was, a pro-Ukrainian group is behind the Nord Stream bombing. So I thought that was so hilarious and silly. I made this video, which I compared, the current group of, well, not anymore. Well, Biden's not in it anymore, but Biden's State Department, the people who run things like Blinken and stuff, as a pro-Ukrainian group, similar to the Monkeys, but called the Honkies. So I'm going to show you that real quick. Enjoy this. If you haven't seen it yet, I think you're going to like it. And if they copyright me, the music in the background is rights-free music, but I may have to mute it or overlay something else when I publish a video on it. But anyway, all that shit aside, watch this. So there you have it, the pro-Ukrainian group that destroyed the Nord Stream pipeline, according to the Wall Street Journal. So to keep going on this, Biden basically confessed out loud that they were going to do it. And, I miss Jon Stewart for this reason, because he used to go back into the weeds on with these long tail issues and dig up old clips of stuff people were saying back in the day. No one in the current press even does that from a year
Just
ago.
a couple weeks later, on February 7th, also being psychic about what would happen to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline if Russia invaded.
There will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
So there's Biden kind of confessing. And I had to dig this other clip up because there was an Atlantic reporter on Bill Maher a while back, and she said the quiet part out loud. These people, it's clearly, the Ukraine thing is clearly a play by the people who, the energy lobbies that control Congress and politics to keep something going there so that they can milk it. And this lady, I forget her name, I think it pops up, but she says that out loud on Bill Maher right here. She writes for the Atlantic, so just to give you an idea.
And I think that there's the eternal folly that wars are won quickly, which we learned twice that wasn't true recently. And I think that the Russian engagement in Ukraine is going to last for many, 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 many years to come, weakening that state considerably. And it's terrifying. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, imagine how terrifying it is if you're a Ukrainian who's being conscripted to die. So this last, just to wrap this up with a nice little bow for you, here's your boy, everyone's boy, Dave Grohl's boy, Chuck D's boy, apparently Rakim and Herbie Hancock's boy, and Tony Blinken of the State Department, telling you again right out
blown
loud.
up when he was asked about it at a State Department briefing.
Ultimately, this is also a tremendous opportunity. It's a tremendous opportunity to once and for all remove the dependence on Russian energy, and thus to take away from Vladimir Putin the weaponization of energy as a means of advancing his imperial designs. That's very significant.
These guys are
and
so
that
Freudian.
offers
Everything they say is a
tremendous,
confession.
strategic opportunity for the years to come. But meanwhile, we're determined to do everything we possibly can to make sure that the consequences of all of this are not borne by citizens in our countries, or for that matter, around the world.
I think this is also a strategic opportunity for me to play this clip.
Keep on bombing lots of people. Keep on bombing lots of people. Bombing lots of people.
Your boy Blinken, rock star.
So while the Western media was convincing people that Russia blew up its own pipeline, Anthony Blinken was saying, hey, you know what? It turns out this is really good for us. We've been trying to force the Europeans not to buy from Russia any longer. And what do you know? Russia went and blew up its own pipeline, and all the benefits were down to us, and it only harms Russia. Wow, we are so happy that Russia blew up its own pipeline and destroyed its strategic interest and benefited our own.
Yay! Thank you, Russia, for blowing up. Thank you, pro-Ukrainian group, for blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline and giving us this incredible opportunity to sell our wares to Europe. What a crazy coincidence. So this next piece is probably my favorite of the day. We might be going a little long today, but this is a good one. And I think the reason I like this so much is because it shows me that the duopoly, the, partisan duopoly, the, what's the word that I like to use post-partisan, the post-partisan movement, the post-duopoly movement is really churning. And this is a bit with Scott Ritter on RBN. And the reason I say that is, you see that it's bringing together people that unlikely allies. And I love that because we have a lot more in common than divides us. But also, I'm going to start with this because I think Nick Cruz right here from RBN makes a case way far better than I ever could for the kind of reason behind a Trump win not being a bad thing. And so I'm just going to play this for you right now. And we'll talk about it. A little slow on the draw here.
I don't want to see him in power, but I think it's dire to allow the Biden administration and the Kamala Harris administration to be rewarded a mandate to commit genocide and start World War III. We need a pendulum to swing as much as possible. This was my position. When you see the momentum, look at George Bush when he gets 2 terms, the damage that he did. Look at the damage that Barack Obama did in 2 terms. Bill Clinton. It's a damage reduction strategy, but the worst thing we can do is allow one wing of the establishment to gain momentum and get the mandate to continue their policies. So we got to disrupt this shit every 4 years. That's my position. That's why I am rooting against Biden unapologetically. You brought up a good reason to do so, but the Biden administration tried to throw our brother Chairman Amali in prison for 15 years. So under the Biden administration, Black socialists and anti-war activists like myself are in danger. And all the all the Bernie Sanders leftists who are endorsing Joe Biden, the entire progressive media apparatus, like TYT, Majority Report, you notice they didn't cover that story, right?
That's such a great point. Did they cover Chairman O'Malley? I don't think so because he's Russian. Just to stay positive for a second, though, Nick, I've been making this case for a few months now, probably for a year, that I think a Trump win is better for the country in general, because also, in addition to, giving the Democrats the L they deserve, it will suddenly turn the brunch liberals against wars. And a large part of the Trump coalition is anti-war. So once you combine those two forces, that's going to force Trump to be accountable as well to any of the anti-war rhetoric that he's using on the campaign trail. We'll see about Israel, of course, but let's keep going.
Because it will be very hard to sell the idea that an administration is the lesser two evil, as they are literally engaging in fascism, threatening to lock up activists in prison for 15 years. So I will not apologize for saying I want that faction of the establishment to lose. And when Trump takes charge, I'm going to root for him to lose next election, but we must have Biden lose. I'm a Joe Stein supporter, but that's...
So one quick aside, he's like, I'll root for Trump to lose the next election. I think he just means the Republicans because Trump can't run again. That's another kind of bonus to a second Trump term is he is a lame duck. He doesn't have to run again. Now, you could argue that he's going to want JD Vance or whoever his successor is to win, which if he does a good job, they have a really good shot at winning. If he does all the things that he's promising, maybe they do. But I think that's just to kind of clarify there. I think that's what Nick meant, because obviously Trump isn't going to have
my position as well. Before I move on, is there anything you want to ask, Scott? Anything that's on your mind before I move on to this next receipt?
Just a couple of things.
So this is beautiful right here. And I just want to let Scott talk because, again, this to me is such another sign that things are moving in the correct direction. Coalitions are forming around where we agree, and on the stuff where we don't agree, we can have those debates when those issues come up. But there's so much stuff that the majority of people who are, Democrat or Republican leaning agree on, that if we don't forego all that bullshit, none of that is ever going to come to fruition. So there's just like a tiny kernel of hope in this kind of thing, for me anyway.
Yeah, I said I respect your position on the U.S. military 100%, and I would be it would be one of the most difficult things in my life if I had a son approaching adulthood who asked me, "Hey, Daddy, I'd like to follow in your footsteps and join the Marine Corps." I have to tell you, the Marine Corps was some of the finest. It was. I'm so proud of what I accomplished in the Marine Corps and what the Marine Corps made me. The opportunities that were provided. I got rid of nuclear weapons as a Marine. That was sort of a cool thing. And the challenges they were given, it was wonderful. But what I always tell people is that when you join the Marine Corps, you have to be totally apolitical. When you join the military, you're apolitical. You can't say I'm joining because I like this president or that president, because the next president may be somebody you don't like, and you're going to have to obey those orders. You have to trust the people whom the American public puts into office to do the right thing, to ensure that before they send you to war, that they've exhausted every possible venue short of war to prevent that war. And sadly, we don't have American leadership that does that. War is the first option, and therefore there's a 99.99.
I just want to stop real quick on that point he made about the military being a nonpartisan thing. I kind of feel like it is that. Most people that join the military definitely have that kind of a worldview because, as he said, to have this multiple
99% chance that if you join the military today, you're going to be asked to engage in a conflict, which if you were a sane private citizen, you would be dead set against, but now you have no choice but to participate in. And so the answer would be not now. Don't join now. You can't join now because, and this hurts me to say this, but in many ways, because of our foreign policy, America is not a country worth fighting for. Because you're not fighting for America, you're fighting for something else. You're fighting for Israel, you're fighting for Ukraine, you're fighting for the military-industrial complex, you're fighting for American global hegemony. But
how can you argue with this either? This is an ex-military, former military person, a well-decorated guy who has a history of integrity, who spoke out against the Iraq War, telling you he wouldn't join the military right now because it's not fighting for America. And that is crazy to think about. We've known this, for a lot of us who pay attention have known this for a long time, but it like mainstream, people in mainstream positions are now saying this out loud.
Last thing you're fighting for is the Constitution and the defense of American freedom. The best way to fight for American freedom is right here at home, doing what Chairman O'Malley and Penny Hess and the Uhura Three have been doing.
I just realized I used the term mainstream in relation to Scott Ritter. A lot of people would say, "Oh, Scott Ritter is not mainstream." I think he is in the world we live in today, where the corporate press is not the mainstream anymore. And I showed you a couple episodes ago the data to back that up. That streaming is much more prominent now than broadcast or cable is. It's like a boomer thing. I think Scott Ritter is mainstream. I think RBN, I think Jimmy Dore, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, they're the new mainstream.
Standing up for their beliefs. And I'll just say this, you know who I am in my background, right? I'm a Reagan Republican, all right? I'm unabashed Ronald Reagan Republican. I don't claim that Reagan was perfect and all that. I'm just telling you, hey, that's how old I am, and those are my political roots. But I'm going to be marching side by side Chairman O'Malley on November 3rd in Washington, D.C. And I'm going to be speaking at the conference on November 2nd in Washington, D.C. in support of the Uhura Three. A white Ronald Reagan Republican is going to be there standing up because it's the most American thing I can do, to stand up for freedom of speech, stand up for freedom of press, stand up for their right to do that which they believe needs to be done. I've told Chairman O'Malley, I can't say that I am naturally drawn to his cause.
So right here, I just want to pause for 1 second and highlight this, because Scott Ritter spills his guts right here. And this is just a moment of such intense honesty. And you can see on Nick's face, he appreciates it, man. Cheers to Nick for doing this interview, because this is a great one.
That doesn't mean his cause is bad. It means I'm ignorant. I'm ignorant of the cause. And I will also plead guilty, and I've done this to his face, of not wanting to be drawn to the cause because it scares me. When I hear black nationalism, when I hear things like that, I mean, my imagination goes wild. Probably.
This is what I loved about Public Enemy when I originally came into them, is they had this kind of militant, scary, like, we scare the shit out of white people, I don't want to say facade. I mean, now that Chuck D is working for the State Department, maybe, but aura about them, and that's back then it is what they were. But I think just the dynamics have shifted enough that, someone like Chuck D, who's kind of comfortable and retired, can forego a lot of those youthful ideals that he once had.
Because I grew up in the 60s and the 70s, and I have inherent internal programming that makes me afraid of black people in the street at night, something like that. I'm just being honest.
All white people have that to some degree. Just, it's part of you, it's wired into you, like he said, and fucking cheers to him for his honesty about that. Because once you acknowledge some shit like that, that's how you get rid of it. Once you're honest about it, that's how you dispel it and obliterate it, evaporate it from existence.
Honest, I'm not going to lie to you.
I appreciate the honesty, at least.
And so, I have to confront this and say, hey, your belief system's sort of screwed up, and you need to work your way through this and do that. And the thing that united Chairman O'Malley and I was freedom of speech, the Constitution. But I love the way he explained it to me. He said, you're a white guy. The Constitution was written for you. Slave. Constitution was not written for me. The Constitution.
You know what, though? I want to stop here for just a second, because even though that might be true, that doesn't mean we can't, it doesn't apply to everyone now. Now that society has shifted, it's still the foundational document that we can interpret through these evolved eyes, So anyway, I'm going to let him keep going. Sorry, I keep
actually written to keep me out of the Constitution. And he said, so you white people, and I didn't take offense at this. He said, you became lazy about the Constitution. You just accepted it at face value. It was there. If you wanted to take advantage of it, you could. If you did, you didn't have to. He said, even when slaves were liberated, freed, so the Constitution wasn't for us. We had to educate ourselves on the Constitution, learn the Constitution, and then learn how to use the Constitution. He says, we being the black nationalists, he said, we know more about the Constitution than most white. And I'm like, he's right. He's 100% right. And as somebody who took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States with my life against all enemies, foreign and domestic, I'm looking at a defender of the Constitution in Chairman O'Malley. And I went, I like this guy, and I like his cause. I can't say that I agree with everything. I mean, there's nobody, you and I could sit down and have a beer, and I can guarantee that we'll agree to a lot, and some stuff will go, yeah, don't agree. That's okay. That's not a problem. Because we respect each other, we work through it. I'm sure there's something in Chairman O'Malley's platform that I'm going to go, I don't know. And I'm sure there's a lot about what I do. He's going to go, I don't know. But that doesn't mean we have to be enemies. And it doesn't mean we can't be friends. And I am marching with the Uhuru Three and their movement.
And I'll just pause for a second to whip myself a little bit, because, people like us, you could make that argument about Chuck D, and the State Department and the shit he's doing with the State Department. Like, just because he's doing some shit with them doesn't mean he agrees with everything that they believe, and vice versa. So just to give Chuck D a little bit of more respect there, that is an argument that could be used in his favor as well.
On November 3rd, because it's the right thing to do. Where are the progressives? Where is Code Pink? Where is Bernie Sanders? Where are all the screaming left-wing liberals out there professing their love for Black Americans and how much they appreciate the Black American cause? I'm not saying that I know damn well I'm not perfect. I just told you, I've got a lot of racism, sort of ingrained in this DNA, not because I want to be a racist. It's just I was raised to, when I was a kid.
And you see it so much more as someone who lived in LA the largest portion of my life. We're kind of insulated to it. Like LA is much like a metro city. It's much more like, I guess, hippy dippy, if you could use the term. I feel like I've been insulated to that kind of thing. But also, he makes a great point in that it's wired into all of us on some level. And I love these conversations, like I said, because you bring it to the surface, and that's how you get
Blacks and whites couldn't get married, and if they were married, man, it was a problem. I remember on the military base, a black pilot showed up in my father's squadron in the late 1960s, married to a white lady. This is in Michigan, and it was a big thing. Like, oh, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? How do we deal with this? What do we do? And when he went to squadron officer,
man, honestly, I'm going to stop there. But in that situation, I'd be concerned for the woman. I would imagine people would be, I mean, I'd be concerned for both of them, obviously, but like, I feel like the racists would come after the woman in a small town like that. But anyway, that all said, this whole conversation was brilliant. Go watch it. And I wanted to highlight just kind of Scott Ritter's path and really Nick's fire explanation of his position on this election cycle, because that's a position that I share 1000%. And I think he did a beautiful job of putting it into words in a way that I haven't been able to yet. So thank you, Nick. I got love for you, brother. Let's move on to the next segment. Cheech and Chong. Cheech and motherfucking Chong were on Bill Maher's podcast. And, I love these guys so much. And I grew up with them, and my dad grew up with them. And they're still out there kicking. And I think that says something about weed that's so crazy, because, weed is so demonized as this like evil thing. But you look at the people who smoke a lot of weed, and they seem to be doing really well in old age. Willie Nelson is another great example of that. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, those fucking druggies. Look at them. They're still out touring, So that's one of the things that struck me as I was watching this, that it's like, wow, look at Cheech and Chong. And Bill Maher starts, to his credit, by giving them a shout out for being the OGs, because they were like pro weed in a very public way before it was really safe to be pro weed in a public way. And so here's the first clip from this that I'll try not to spend too long.
And we're geeks bearing gifts. Me too. And of course I'm nervous it will live up to the approval of the gods. But I stand on your shoulders in many ways as a comedian of some years who has, among my bag of tricks, certainly traded on
comedian or
my
not
reputation for enjoying marijuana.
This is good for you.
A lot, and had a zillion lines and jokes that worked because but that all came from you. You guys did that first. You did it best. You are the OGs of that.
No extra charge.
So they get into a lot of politics here. And the first thing they talk about is, I don't know if you remember this, but a few years ago, Chong was arrested by the Bush administration for selling bongs on the internet. And he talks a little bit about that, but as you'll see later in the conversation, I think these guys are just like any liberal, kind of walled into their own little bubble. So they kind of don't recognize their own hypocrisy later in the conversation.
Because I have zero recollection. But
I got out of jail.
Maybe they're right about that with the pot.
I got out of jail.
The memory.
I missed it at the beginning of the clip, but Cheech held up Chong's mugshot, and he's like, "This is a dangerous man."
It was just one moment,
And why did you go? You were selling bongs or some shit?
No, I went in because I was
selling
my
bongs.
Company was selling bongs.
See, I just don't think that would happen today.
You don't know. The right DA and the right.
We've come a long way. In Albuquerque, New Mexico, there are dispensaries on every goddamn corner. I think there's more dispensaries per capita in Albuquerque, New Mexico than in Los Angeles.
Town, it can happen.
Really?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Maybe I'm being sanguine about it, but like
No, they had a hit on me.
a hit.
The Bush family.
To kill you?
No, he was invading Iraq, and so they needed some sort of hippie bullshit.
Wag the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
They
they
needed to
wanted
wag the
So
dog.
they attacked me, and they sent.
These days, our wars are much more noble. We're trying to arm proxies to fire missiles into Russia. A lot of people don't realize this, not to take a complete sidebar, but Ukrainistan, like we did the proxy thing with Russia in the 80s with the Taliban. Remember how that ended up? People have such short memories.
On 9/11.
Really?
They expected a big protest, you know.
Yeah.
And the one guy showed up with a sign saying "Free marijuana."
Free marijuana. One guy.
Was he giving it away?
No, that's why.
That's a brilliant joke, actually.
No one figured that one out.
That's genius. That's why it's so good.
Yeah.
But that's a scream.
Yeah. Free marijuana. And that was it. And the judge, Schultz was his name, and he had a reputation of doing whatever the Bush people wanted done. And so that's why he was giving my thing.
So just, again, the stunning lack of awareness from these people, like you don't think that's what's going on currently with the current administration? They don't have a Justice Department that's doing whatever they want and a bunch of judges that they are doing whatever they want. Biden was vice president for 8 years under Obama. You don't think he appointed a lot of judges in that time?
Because when I went to court, they were saying things, you know, they were reading off the charges, and I'm trying to be as honest as I can. And when they said that I own the company, I had to correct them and say, no, I don't. And so they had to stop the whole proceedings.
Here you go.
Just a quick break here. 10 years ago, maybe not 10, maybe 20 years ago, 20 years ago, actually, 20 years ago, Chong was being arrested for selling bongs on the internet. Now he's on a live streamed show that's widely seen all over the world, smoking marijuana in public. It's a beautiful world we live in. And I just say all this too, just to remind you that this is something that kind of I thought about as I was compiling these clips a lot. No matter what the politics are of the day, the vast public sentiment will always prevail. And, you know, with marijuana is a good example of that. Gay marriage is a good example of that. Anything that the public widely backs enough, it doesn't matter how many interests are aligned against it, it will eventually prevail.
And say, well, just a minute. We agreed that you're going to plead guilty. And so they were doing this.
It's so Soviet.
Huh?
Yeah.
So Soviet, right?
That's what it
Listen
was.
to that.
They needed a face for their campaign because they were going after paraphernalia on the internet.
Right.
And they needed a face.
That's so Soviet. They do not see the parallels to what the current administration is doing here today.
Right.
And,
Enter the face.
and the fact that
We just talked about the O'Malley thing. It's so crazy.
and the name Chong didn't help. You know, because you know, when they see Chong right away, they think Chinese, you know.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah. and that's what the court, everybody else. And so when they're going after someone, Chong was perfect.
And you think they wanted to get Chinese more than?
Well, the Chinese name didn't help. You know, who is this guy?
But all the Chinese always come up to
we
them.
weren't
How
even
come your name
fear-mongering
Chong?
about China back then.
I'm Chinese.
I mean, I don't know if even the Bushes were going after the Chinese in 2004. I mean, China, the country, I've complained about this many times on my other show. I don't want to get too political, but like one of the problems with the left, I think, is that they see everything through the prism of race. So they're way too easy on China, which does horrible fucking things.
Okay, I have to cut in here. Because again, this is the boomer mentality, like, oh, the young left, they just don't. Bro, you are the one who sees China through a fucked up lens. All you guys see China through the lens of the fucking corporate media that's like, oh, China's out to get us, China's out. China has made literally no aggressive moves toward us, but these guys can look down on the younger generation who's better informed than them and go, oh, these dummies, these dumb kids, they don't have any beefs with China. Look in the fucking mirror, Bill Maher.
Horrible, illiberal, dictatorial, anti-freedom, anti-human things.
They would run over a guy with a tank on TV. You know?
Yes,
They run over a guy with a tank.
Yeah, they did.
The Chinese, like, listen to these fucking, and again, I love these guys, no disrespect, but it's just, it's so telling of the bubble that they live in. I'm bringing a comment here from Truth Violates community guidelines. He says, guess they're not aware people get visited by feds for social media posts. Happened many times now. Yeah. And like they're saying with China ran over a guy with a tank. Are you watching what's going on in the world right now, guys? Like, have you seen any of the footage of what's going on in the Middle East or, you know, Eastern Europe, for example? Any of those conscription videos? Like, that's all our money doing that. But they're like, oh, China ran over someone with a tank. They're so terrible. Civil rights violations. Also, the Tiananmen Square thing that they're talking about is kind of debunked propaganda now. Anyway, let them finish.
Right.
Yes.
But, you know, because it could be seen as racist, you know, they wouldn't say, for example, that the COVID.
Okay, just one more quick aside here. Fuck you, Bill Maher. Oh, therefore they don't want to be seen as racist. So this is the same guy who's like, you're an anti-Semite if you have anything to say that's negative about Israel. Fuck you, Bill Maher. Oh my God. The lack of self-awareness.
Virus escaped from a lab. And it wasn't even accusing China of doing it on purpose, which you could. It's possible.
No, again, and this is the other thing that these dipshits miss. The fact that the virus was in China is irrelevant. Everything the goddamn USA makes is made in fucking China. Even viruses now, because it was us who funded it. It wasn't like a Chinese conspiracy to get us. It was the United States making something shitty in China like we do all the time and have done for, you know, since fucking we started shipping all our labor over there for cheap shit.
I don't think it was, but I do think it escaped from a lab.
Yeah.
I mean,
or a wet market.
That's the other possibility.
That's the other possibility.
So Bill Maher kind of makes the safe John Stewart
and it
point
could be that,
right
but I have a feeling in 50 years, people will look back and they will say, wait a minute, I wasn't around at the time. Are you telling me that the virus escaped from the one place in China that was working on the virus?
and
people at the time were like debating what. I feel it will look obvious.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I don't know.
These guys are like,
Chong, getting back to your story. So they wanted to get you for so many things.
Yeah,
Chinese, but mostly distraction.
Yeah.
Do you harbor bitterness toward the Bush family? No.
Oh, actually,
no.
No, it was a life changer for me. No, it was. Well, I had hung with Timothy Leary, and Tim.
I did too. You know that chair over there?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna cut out there because then they get into like Bill Maher's like, a lot of these clips are great, and then Bill Maher goes off on some LA side thing about like, well, I know this guy and we did this back then, and and it's like, yeah, dude, who cares, Bill Maher? One of the things I was just thinking about though is if you've ever seen some of those old Cheech and Chong movies, like Up in Smoke, for example, the song "Earache My Eye," like they were like way ahead of the curve too on like kind of like trans, like gay stuff. Like my mom was talking to me, trying to tell me how to live. You know, my daddy, he did so because I wear my sister's clothes. You know, that kind of shit. They were kind of pushing the boundaries, albeit probably to be funny, but you know, they were out there back before it was safe, I guess, is the point I'm making. So this next bit, they talk about weed and Chinese healthcare. And this is actually really interesting. It goes back to what I was saying at the beginning here about how people that smoke marijuana have been advocates for marijuana over the years, like Willie Nelson and Cheech and Chong, look great in their 80s. So here's this one.
Pesticides, fungus.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's probably not great for our bodies to be putting smoke in them.
Yeah, probably not.
Right. I mean, just common sense.
The Chinese feel it's okay.
Oh, always with the Chinese.
Hey,
Kidding.
Also, if you look at the Chinese population, generally much healthier than the United States population. So I would actually listen to the Chinese on this.
5,000 years ago,
Maybe that's where the virus came from.
5,000 years ago, they wrote in the I Ching that they use cannabis to combat cancer. Because back in the day, the emperors paid the doctors to keep them healthy. But if they got sick and they, for one reason, died, they would kill the doctors.
You know, that's an extreme version.
So if I was like a hack journalist, I would take this clip and be like, Bill Maher and Cheech and Chong advocate for killing doctors. Listen to what they say here. This is actually really good.
But that model is something that not only is discussed as something we should do, but we should do. We should incentivize health. Keep the patient healthy, you get more money. Don't do that, and we kill you. I like the Chinese model.
Like it.
You know
It's
what? I
simple.
like it.
I like it.
You know that the Chinese invented the penis?
The penis?
Oh, I stepped on his joke. Listen to his
Kill
joke.
you. I like the Chinese
I
model.
like it.
You
It's
know what? I
simple.
like it.
I like it.
You know that the Chinese invented the penis?
The penis?
That's kind of funny. So just to close this out, I got a couple of clips of them talking about Trump. And again, this is an area where these guys really illustrate their complete lack of self-awareness. But let's listen to some of this and we'll talk about it. So
With them with pictures of their pets going, gee. It was the funniest thing I saw all year.
I've been enjoying the Trump follies. You know, the comedians and all the material that Trump's generated.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you can't.
He's going to be. But there should be a monument made for Trump. Like if there is really God and a justice in this world,
there's not.
Trump will be sentenced to Guantanamo.
again, I love you, Chong, but that is just a really out of touch statement, man. You were just talking about the Bush administration unfairly prosecuting you for selling bongs, you know, making an example out of you. And it's pretty clear, I think, at this point that Trump is being made an example of. And it's because of the partisan walls that, you know, people that have this kind of wealth and the ability to kind of like live freely and just kind of absorb whatever the corporate media kind of spews. They're just walled into this partisan viewpoint where they don't see how hypocritical they are.
Life, but there they'll build the biggest sand trap, golf.
When you go to Guantanamo,
that's all he's got. He's got just a sand trap,
sir. When you go to Guantanamo, they give you one of those ass pillows because
no one gives them to you. These guys,
you have to earn it.
Nobody gives you an ass pillow in this world, my friend. Nobody gives you one.
You have to find a way.
Chong's like, I've been to prison. They don't just give them to
make
you.
them.
You do.
Buy them.
I've always said that.
No.
Yes. Nobody gives.
Prison is a whole different life there.
Gives you an ass pillow, and they shouldn't.
And they shouldn't.
Because that's what makes an ass pillow. You know what? Yeah. Maybe you have something that prevented you from being successful. I used to
Maybe you could be the new ass pillow guy.
So this last clip is probably the best one, where they talk about the election, the coming election. And again, just, I guess I shouldn't say it's the best one. It just kind of is the most blatant illustration of what I just said about what a constructed bubble people like this live in. And they view everything through this very curated partisan lens, if you will. But let's talk about
the kingdom.
Yeah.
And they all go through that. period. You know, look at Bush, or look at Trump, and all those guys are, you know, the lion in winter right now is what we're seeing, but a crazy version of it. It's like,
Yeah, but he's not. Trump ain't trying to invade anybody.
I'll give him a chance.
You got to give Bill Maher some credit too, because as I've said before, he has probably the most valid reason of any TV pundit to hate Trump, because Trump sued him for a joke. But he even comes down on the side of rationality sometimes on the Trump thing, surprisingly.
We did. He was president for 4 years. I mean, nobody hates Trump more than me, but he didn't, you know. His instinct is the opposite. He wants to get out of Ukraine.
Yeah.
He wants to just give it to Putin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, this is that press-built black or white mentality. You either keep killing Ukrainians until they're all dead, or you give Ukraine to Putin. Putin.
Yeah, his big secret plan.
Yeah.
My secret plan. We give up. Yeah, my plan to end the war. We give up. Okay, you know.
And that's what it,
and to live in this bubble, you have to only view, like, you've only known about Ukraine since 2022. You don't know about any of the history.
this plan is. I mean,
I've been enjoying the Trump. Oh my God, eating they're eating your dog.
Oh, it's
fuck. It was like watching a marlin about to take that bait. You know, like what was gonna go? He's gonna the big mackerel out there. You know, half a mackerel.
Well, I said on my show Friday, I think he's a toast.
Yeah,
I'm putting down my marker
Yeah.
that he's going to lose this election. I've always been a pessimist about him. This is the first time.
He knows he's going to lose.
I don't know that he's going to lose. I do think that the chances are very likely, but based on what I've been showing you about how good the press is at convincing people of complete falsehoods, like, again, to go back to this one more time before we close out in this last segment, this was the press a year ago. Republicans float a quiet conspiracy theory that Biden won't be on the ballot. And today, that conspiracy theory is conspiriality. Biden is not on the ballot. So these guys, you know, they have to live in this world where they're getting their information from a polluted well. All of it.
With his luck, he could.
See, Chong injects.
Well, I think it'll be tied, as the polls always are on election day. The American people just love to play a game of chicken, and they always will.
Yeah.
But they're like
Not
people
true.
who shop.
The press manufactures a horse race because there's so much money in elections.
Sell papers or newspapers or internet or something. You got breaking news.
Right.
And that's what it is, breaking news.
But I think at the last minute, when people go into the booth this time,
they'll do it right.
They just have had enough.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, he has a strong base, but
no.
Had enough of what? Is Trump running the country right now? Like, one of the things that they point out with the immigration debate is that Trump shot down the bill. Like, he forced Congress to not vote for the bill that they had. That shows a lot of power that he wields outside of office. They're in control of the government right now, and Trump is more powerful than they are. That's what people are fed up with it. People are sick of it. Sick of Trump not being president? Like, what are you talking about? Kamala Harris is the vice president right now. If they're sick of anything, they're sick of this.
They're very strong, and it's not going to be a walk, but at the end of the day, it'll be just enough. That's the marker.
I don't know. I think they're going to give people the polls they have.
So here's the thing I was telling a friend of mine who is kind of a Republican Trump supporter type guy, because he used to tell me when Obama was running that, people won't vote for a black guy. When they go into the voting booth, you just wait and see. People say they will in polls, but they won't vote for a black guy once the curtains are closed and no one can see what they're doing. I think it's a similar dynamic with Trump. I think, because I see Harris Waltz signs all over the place where I live, but I don't see many Trump signs. In fact, I haven't seen any. And I think it's because most people know that if you wave that flag, you're going to be called a racist. And so I think it's kind of like a reverse situation with Trump, where I think a lot of people who won't say out loud that they'll vote for Trump will when push comes to shove.
I seen
Had before.
I seen will be when he gets sentenced.
No,
That'll come
there's no
next.
sentencing anymore. Oh yeah, he does get sentenced, right?
Yes, he does.
Oh right, in the hush money one.
He does.
Yeah, he gets sentenced in a case that is basically the same thing Bill Clinton, who you all love, did.
All right. Well, you know, I don't want to base my happiness based on how unhappy he is.
Yeah.
I feel like, you know.
No,
Get
you
out
gotta,
of my life, man.
you got to accept him for what he was. And he was.
I don't accept him. I completely don't accept him. But
No,
I also don't accept
he
letting
did-
his psyche like control my psyche.
Think what he did. He did things that no one could do.
Yes, true.
What?
Oh, yes.
No one
Mostly
could
for
do-
the worse.
No one could do. No,
Yes.
the best.
Honestly, that's the argument I would make about Barack Obama. Barack Obama got away with things that George Bush couldn't have gotten away with.
He got Joe Biden elected.
This is good.
No one else could have done that.
That's funny. That's not a compliment to Joe Biden, but I
Chong every once in a while with the truth bomb. And that's why I think it's kind of depressing that these guys kind of live in that shit lib world, because it sounds like you listen to them talk like what Chong just said, and they're not stupid. You know, they're not dumb people. They're just wrapped up in that propaganda blanket.
I mean, I'm not going to argue with it either.
And
it's
he's
true.
going to get
You're right. He
Kamala elected too. He'll be responsible for the first black woman president of America, thanks to Donald Trump.
You're right.
I saw a tweet this morning that made a lot of sense. Like a woman actually was like, can you imagine? I think it was Marianne Williamson actually was like, wouldn't it be terrible if Kamala Harris was the first female president? Oh my God, no one liked Kamala Harris in the Democratic primary. She's one of the first people to. You know this. I don't have to go through all this shit. Just keep listening.
To just give it to Putin.
Yeah.
You know, his big secret plan.
Yeah.
Sorry, I bet.
That's funny. That's not a compliment to Joe Biden, but I
thanks to Donald Trump.
You're right.
That's it. And we'll owe it all to him.
I sense you don't like him. Well, I don't like him either. And I don't care who knows it.
I don't like him either.
I think he's kind of a buffoon, if I'm going to be completely honest.
Comedy god.
He's a comedy, yeah. Nobody ever provided more material because unlike other presidents who had one or two things about them that were obviously fun.
It's even more, just to break again for a second, it's even more stunning to watch this after watching that interview Trump just did with Andrew Schultz and his guys.
I
These
mean,
guys,
you know, Bush was stupid and Clinton was horny. Like, this guy's everything. He's both stupid and crazy and horny and fat and wants to fuck his
and he
daughter.
looks like the devil.
And and has this preposterous turkey sandwich on his head. And it's his real hair.
Yeah.
That's even worse. It's not a wig. It would somehow be better, don't you think?
And he stinks. He stinks.
Stinks.
He's putrid.
This is his latest theory. Your latest story.
No,
about Trump.
it's been proven. They got internet.
They got the smell.
again, this is good because Bill Maher actually injects a little reality.
What? He stinks.
Trump, yeah.
Like physically?
He has to wear diapers. He shits himself.
Oh, come on. Who are you getting this?
On the internet.
On the internet. You sound like them. This
Well,
is my
don't tell
problem
me
with
that.
America.
But
Everybody's fucking nuts. Oh, Christ. On the internet. Well, that wraps that up.
We'll take that cue from Bill Maher. That wraps that up. But that's a good interview. You know, Cheech and Chong, again, legendary figures as far as I'm concerned. I don't fault them for their Trump derangement because everyone has it who lives in the kind of, you know, encapsulated media bubble that people like them do. So let's close this out with some fun stuff. I put this at the end because if I do get shut off for copyright for some reason, it's at the end. Switch over to Rumble. But there's some good stuff in here. And again, another thing I wanted to highlight, Ryan Long is a stand-up comedian. He does a lot of political jokes. And I just watched his most recent stand-up special. It's called Problem Solved. It's amazing. Go check it out. But I got a couple of funny little highlights to wrap this up today that fit into our general structure. So this first one, he talks about seeing some gay Trumpers, which is, just listen. I don't want to step on it.
What a weird combo. It's because of all this stuff. Recently, I saw two super gay dudes holding hands with Trump hats on. That's a fun combo, right? Ideal situations, build the border wall, then put a glory hole in it. You're not getting in. A little something for the road. No, I don't think being gay is a choice. Being really gay, probably a bit of a choice, but I hope that's your choice, to wear the shirt that says I'm a cum slave. You're not waking up every morning, why do I have to do this?
So there's two little bits here I want to tie together because they're so good. He has this whole bit about the algorithm and how it's designed to like get your mind off of like important things. And this first part is about how vagina is worth much more than dick. In comedy, there's always these moments of clarity where there's just like, wow, that's way too real. And this is one of those.
That's simple arithmetic. Girls can sell their used panties on the internet for thousands of dollars just because it touched your vagina. That's crazy, right? Everything a dick touches is immediately worth less money. That is a fact. Watch, give me your drink. I'll do a demonstration of the devaluing power.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So here's the algorithm versus tits conspiracy, which is, again, another brilliant thread he weaves, to use a term. He does the weave.
Mark Zuckerberg's out to get me! In real life, a girl doesn't walk by with her tits out, you take a peek, and for the rest of the day, she's everywhere. I'm at the bank, and I take a break. You looked once, you look forever!
So he's talking about how if you like a photo with a girl with her like cleavage or something, it starts feeding you all these videos of boobs.
Trying to get dudes off the conspiracy videos, that's what's happening. They see you looking at MK Ultra late at night, they're like, send in the titties. Close up this third eye. What's the Federal Reserve been up to? Titties. You can't have flat earth, but you can have round tits. That's the algorithm saying to you. That's how they keep you depressed.
This is my favorite joke in his whole set, probably. Listen to this, you'll appreciate it.
For a depression medication, and the side effects were suicidal thoughts, so it's not a great product, you know? All right, what if it doesn't work? They're like, well, just say you won't be depressed one way or the other after you take it. You can have a side effect that's worse. That's like, oh, we have a medication for CTE, and the side effects are you might beat your wife more. It's worse. That's like if you went to get the vaccine for COVID. Well, that's a bad example because that one's perfect, but there are potentially... Oh, God. Now they're sending me titties again. This is what happens.
Well played, my friend. Well played. And this last one is about just I need to like actually dig up this news bit, but he's talking about, I don't know if you remember this a while back, but Michael Douglas got throat cancer. And what the source of that was like a big deal. And I totally missed this, but it's hilarious.
I I think as society, we all owe Michael Douglas a bit of an apology, because I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, Michael Douglas was like, one of the reasons I got throat cancer was from eating pussy. And everyone was like, shut up, Michael Douglas, that's not how you get throat cancer. And then a lot of doctors were like, it's one of the leading causes of throat cancer. And women still make you do it. That's how much of monsters they are. They want you to go down on them, even though they have a pack of smokes between their legs.
All right, so that's the funny cap to this show. Hopefully you got a little bit more informed, or you heard something you haven't heard before. That's what I do this for. This is my Sunday morning coffee and weed routine. Like and subscribe, all that good shit. You know the deal. I'm out here doing this. And this is episode 75. So we're closing up on 100. I hope to do this a lot more. I wish I had more time to do this because I do enjoy doing it. I do enjoy going down these rabbit holes and kind of putting these all together. And I think with this one, I had a little more time to kind of string the clips together. So it was a little less clunky maybe than some of my previous efforts. But I'm going to keep plowing through it. And I sincerely appreciate anyone who tunes in and watches my shit. I got mad love for you all. And don't hesitate to correct me if I say something that is untrue. Hit me up on Twitter. It's at RoadGrimes. And I'm going to close you out here today by playing you one of my masterpieces in relation to the whole conversation about, pharmaceuticals and side effects and everything. This is from my DJ Side Effects era. This is a little track I'm going to bless you with on my way out today called Digital Drugs. It's a beat kind of interspersed with an actual news report from the early 2000s, maybe 2010s. From Oklahoma, a real news report about kids getting high off MP3 files. This is how crazy America has always been. So anyway, I hope that you enjoy it. And once again, please hit me up on Twitter. It's at RoadGrimes. And we'll see you next time. Take good care of yourselves out there.
And websites are luring kids with free downloads of so-called digital drugs, which are audio files designed to induce drug-like effects.
To experience these digital drugs are headphones, their computer, and an MP3 player. Demons into a MP3 player. Digital drugs. All kids need to experience these digital drugs are headphones, their computer, and an MP3 player. It was like some weird demons into a iPod or something, and he was just freaking out. He was just freaking out. Demons. He was just freaking out. He was just freaking out. Demons to a iPod or something, and he was just freaking out. All kids need to experience these digital drugs are headphones, their computer, and an MP3 player. demons.
Audio files designed to induce drug-like effects.
Digital demons.
Audio files designed to induce drug-like effects. Drug-like effects.
I heard it was like some weird like demon through a iPod or something, and he was just freaking out. Digital demons.
Kids are going to flock to these sites just to see what it's about, and it can lead them other places.